There is a recent video from one of my good YouTuber friends, Autistic AF, Mike, of course, who talked recently about HealthyGamerGG, Dr. K. Apparently this video is fairly perhaps controversial. It is called Autistic Meltdowns Are Not Temper Tantrums. Let's get into it.
Have you ever been told that an autistic meltdown is just a temper tantrum? Something like this?
There's a tendency for things like temper tantrums, managing things like temper tantrums and stuff like that. Reduces things like temper tantrum. Have anger issues or throw temper tantrums. You throw a temper tantrum. We're going to work on temper tantrums and supplementation.
It's going hard on the edits. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that a lot, to be honest. Meltdown's definitely not the same as a temper tantrum. Autistic people can have tantrums, that is for sure. And sometimes those tantrums can turn into meltdowns. That is an important factor to allude to here. But the way that you go about sort of addressing tantrums versus meltdowns are very, very different. You can't really do much sort of logical sort of reasoning when someone is having a meltdown. Like, if you're wanting to address something which led them to get into the meltdown, you should do so at a later date and not during it. Like, most of the time, if someone's having a meltdown, the most important thing is trying to bring them out of that meltdown first. And it doesn't really matter what the cause of it was in the instant. It will still happen even if that cause is fixed because it's a meltdown. Whereas with tantrums, they're goal directed. So once something is sorted out, once they get their own way or in a sense, then it sort of dissipates and they stop very quickly. It's kind of a baseline, but let Mike address this.
So temper tantrums. You're having temper tantrum.
Let's set the record straight. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late diagnosed autistic adult.
Hello, Mike.
Today we're going to talk about why autistic meltdowns often get confused for temper tantrums, even by psychiatrists like Dr. Alok K.
And I'm sure that there are going to be people who are watching this who know more about autism treatment than I am. And by all means, comment, share your wisdom with the rest of us. Share your wisdom with the rest of us.
Will do. Dr. K is an American psychiatrist who runs a mental health coaching company in the online gaming space. And in his last live stream titled Dr. K's Primer on Autism Spectrum Disorder earlier this week, he might have needed a little priming himself beforehand.
Yeah.
We are all human, so mistakes can happen. But as Spider-Man once said, with great reach comes a great responsibility to make sure that your language is precise and accurate, or something like that.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, Uncle Ben. We love him. Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the things that people get wrong a lot with, when autism advocates are sort of talking about medical professionals. I don't think that many of us are saying that they don't know anything and that they don't know a lot. They don't have a lot of knowledge and experience in certain areas. It's less about that and it's more about tempering it and trying to understand, because it's definitely a very big thing to have a degree in psychology when you're talking about things related to psychology. But quite often people specialize in certain things and not always. For example, give the example of autism. Not always every single person who's gone through a psychology degree is going to have a lot of knowledge on autism. They may not specialize in it. They may specialize in depression or anxiety, but just not really sort of have many lectures or not really do much research or not really specialize in sort of understanding autism and autistic people. So that's an important caveat. And of course, there is the other aspects of, having sort of the medical, psychological based knowledge doesn't always give you the full picture of what being an autistic person is like. And quite often people forget about that as being quite an important aspect, because autism is still in the process of being understood and researched. And the thing is, the autistic community, although the whole socio-political world can be fairly grey in a sense, has made a lot of leaps in terms of understanding the autistic experience. And, it's kind of going beyond the books and beyond sort of the whole pathology medical paradigm stuff, which I think is important to both have a grasp of the medical scientific stuff, but also the lived experience aspect of it too. Because it's people. for sure. It's important. But that doesn't mean that all of them are wrong, you know? It just means some people have a lot of conviction and a set of credentials in areas that perhaps they shouldn't have as much conviction in, you know? That's the only thing, for sure.
When you have an audience of about 2.5 million subscribers and there were 3,000 livestream viewers at the time I was watching,
Wow.
It's vital to get it right and not spread misinformation. Last week, I made a video where we looked at the 1 in 36, the ratio of diagnosed autistic people to the general population. That's around 83 autistic people in his audience who could have been made to feel awful. It's incredibly stigmatizing to refer to the challenges of autistic emotional regulation as
throw temper tantrums.
Throwing a tantrum.
Throwing a temper tantrum. Yeah, it's different. Has a meltdown, throwing a temper tantrum. I don't know about you, but I feel like that terminology should not be used for adults. Like, I don't know, it feels quite infantilizing. You know, just my opinion though. More you know, the more you don't know. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. Yeah, you said it correctly, Layla. Yeah, conviction tends to be very high at the start of understanding concepts and things, whereas for most people, if they don't have a degree of existing, I'm not saying that Dr. K has got this in anything, I'm just talking in general. If they don't have an already existing amount of ego to them, you know, most people will probably talk with less conviction the more that they sort of learn about a subject, as I found.
Which is othering and ableist, similar to that of a neurotypical expert looking down at his pet ant colony. Now, that's not to say that autistic people can't throw a tantrum, but there's much more to it than Dr. K implies. An autistic meltdown is an involuntary response to overwhelming sensory or emotional stimuli. It's involuntary, and learning about what our triggers are and how to avoid them is a critical part of learning and growing up autistic.
Yep.
They can be frightening, upsetting, stressful, embarrassing, and leave us exhausted and depleted, sometimes for long periods of time. They happen when demands exceed our ability to cope and stay regulated. On the other hand, a temper tantrum is an emotional outburst, usually alongside other negative behaviours, and is often a voluntary, goal-orientated, attention-seeking behaviour. Something like this.
100%. Yeah, and then it just stops as soon as you do it, you know. However, let's give this scenario. This happens, you know. They want this bag of chips, you know. Perhaps they're usually with their mum and they've gone to stay with their dads for a little bit. Usually, what would happen is they went to the store and they would get these specific. I can't believe I call them chips. They get these specific crisps like every single time that they go to shops with their mum, and then they go to the shops with their dad and he doesn't get it. And obviously there is a little bit of temper to it, but then perhaps it escalates a little bit. Emotions rise. They start to become a little bit dissociated. They go into sort of a pre-meltdown state. Then they have a meltdown. That could definitely happen. I feel like I can tell the difference, but you know, definitely like a different thing for sure. 100%. And I mean, there's lots of stuff that I could talk about in meltdowns. Like there's a whole pre-meltdown state, you know, this kind of meltdown hangover thing that I've talked about. You have shutdowns, you have difference between meltdowns and panic attacks. There's so many stuff to talk about with meltdowns for sure. I mean, usually I haven't had a lot of full-blown meltdowns, but I have had quite a few pre-meltdown states, particularly like in the gym in the past week, just due to like overall anxiety and the amount of stimulation that's in the gym, for sure. Is a condom ad? Oh dear.
He really wants those sweeties.
Oh, the sweeties. Do all autistic people have meltdowns? Probably not. Probably not all.
This dad is out shopping with his young child who really wants sweets or candy, doesn't get them, and then kicks off, as we say in the UK. Do you say kicks off elsewhere in the world? Let me know in the comments below. And has
Kicking
a temper tantrum. This is a de facto temper tantrum. When my son was about 3 years old, he would sometimes just drop to the ground and scream. It only got worse the more that people watched, or the more that we were in public. And as if by magic, looking away, or indeed like walking away, would stop the tantrum in its tracks, just as quickly as it started.
Yeah.
I don't negotiate with terrorists. But later, during a particularly difficult time in my adult life, it was during a particularly difficult divorce after 13 years of marriage. I remember a friend taking me to the police station for support, and I just broke down, collapsed on the floor, unable to move.
Yeah.
My whole brain was on fire. I didn't want anything. I wasn't trying to manipulate anyone. I couldn't just snap out of it. I just wanted to be left alone.
You get kind of, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I know when just about before when I'm going to have a meltdown, I get this feeling. It's kind of like this sense of dissociation, and I don't know what it is. It just kind of washes over me, and I'm like, oh damn, I'm not in a good headspace at the moment. Just, that realization period is like probably like a minute before you have a meltdown. If you have one of those, if you can sort of feel it coming, just get yourself somewhere quiet and safe. It's taken quite a while to sort of really embed that that's the thing that I need to do. The issue is that it can come in situations where I'm having difficult conversations with people. So being able to self-advocate for yourself and get yourself somewhere safe during those situations can be quite difficult sometimes.
All of the pressure of life, of home as I knew it, my work and finances, was going to change forever.
That's a lot to do with.
It was just in a state, and my life was just in a state of chaotic flux. I knew my life would never be the same again. But during a meltdown, I couldn't process my thoughts. Not rationally anyway. It was like my entire being was on fire. It was ugly,
rationalize
and
a
it was
meltdown.
painful. Afterwards, the release was kind of cathartic, but I couldn't speak to anyone for days. Very much unlike a tantrum. So let's go into detail then. What is an autistic meltdown? We have a saying in the autism community. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everybody's challenges and strengths are unique to them. And I do not claim to speak for all autistic people on my channel, but I will challenge misinformation and bad science when I see it. In theory, it might be possible to create a briefing, a primer on the topic of autism. And if you did, meltdowns, shutdowns, and burnout would be key topics to include.
Yes.
In 3 hours, Dr. K mentions meltdowns by name only once, and that's in the context, again, of a temper tantrum, a term he mentions no less than 13 times over those 3 hours.
Wow.
You can sometimes do things that cause other people problems, right? So you throw a temper tantrum. Your backpack was not packed in the way that you...
It's being posed as like an action, which is the opposite of what a meltdown is like. You can't make you can't just like flick a switch in your brain and say, right, I'm gonna have a meltdown now. That's not how it works. I was gonna say you can't make yourself have one, but I don't know, just expose yourself to a very stressful, overstimulating situation. You know what I mean? But that is very concerning. Be interested to see what Mike has to say about like how meltdowns are. That would be quite interesting, because I have seen people have very, very different, like they look very, very different when they're having a meltdown. Some people can get like really, really angry and aggressive sometimes. Some people can get very, very upset and just all that. For me, it kind of looks like some kind of fit, to be honest. I get like overwhelming tics, because I do have tics, but they only tend to happen when I'm anxious, and they just get completely overwhelming to the point it's quite hard for me to like stand up properly. That's when it's like very, very intense. It's usually anxiety based for me. Usually I have more shutdowns and meltdowns. Yeah, me too, for sure. I do think that shutdowns in general can be quite protective in a sense. Like it's kind of like your body's dissociative kind of response to stressful situations and such. Yeah, and shutdowns are often ignored. I wouldn't say that particularly shutdowns are a very stressful, horrible experience. They're not nice. I don't like them, but they're definitely not as intense as meltdowns for me. Yeah, you too, Elliot.
you wanted, and suddenly you're having a meltdown and you're smashing your fists, and the parents are fed up. So they're like, you need to see a psychiatrist.
You need to stop
He never
this.
once mentions and covers burnout, the insidious experience that a great many autistic people fear or battle with from time to time. And burnout is inextricably linked to meltdowns and a key element for any primer or briefing on the subject of autism.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yep.
When we're running hot and pushing towards our peak capacity to manage over sustained periods, we will inevitably burn out. Neurotypicals burn out too, but society is not structured in an autism-friendly way. And those additional...
Well, we can experience burnouts. I think the difference between an autistic burnout and a burnout is that there are specific things related to autism that can cause you to get into those states in the long term that can mix in with like the general causes of general burnout, and also like the way that it manifests, like the symptoms of burnout, I suppose.
Pressures, those additional differences make it harder for an autistic person to cope.
Yeah.
Sometimes we talk about spoon theory, having a finite number of spoons as a currency of energy, something that you can spend on tasks throughout the day. I prefer spell slots myself, but I have been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 recently.
I like that.
Take something seemingly as small as those itchy school jumpers of the 80s and 90s. An inconvenience for thousands of neurotypical students, but a constant nightmare for some autistic ones like myself. Imagine if everyone had to attend state schools wearing like a literal sackcloth and ashes. I can imagine a fair few neurotypical or holistic students brought to the point of meltdown from that additional stress alone. Autistic people have to deal with more challenges, more bullshit, just to get by and achieve in life. The UK Office of National Statistics report from 2021 shows that around 16% of autistic people are in full-time employment. 16%. Whilst this is true in some measure for all of the categories of disabled people, for those who are primarily autistic have the second to worst outcomes out of all of the categories. Autistic people are more underemployed than all of the physically disabled groups. The only group more underemployed than autistic people are those with severe or specific learning difficulties. But with the right...
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I feel, because autism is such a broad diagnosis in terms of like someone's potential competency in at work or like ability to sort of manage their own lives. I think there has been some specific studies going into like the employment rates for like ASD 1-2 individuals versus like ASD 3. I think that there are some quite heavy differences between the two, but we are generally, like, is right. Like, we are generally less employed, less full-time employed, at least, than our holistic counterparts, for sure.
Environments, we can thrive. I've had a long career in computer science. I've worked on many high-profile projects, thanks to my neurotype. It's thanks to my autism and not in spite of it.
Yes, yeah.
My first video on this channel was on the monotropism theory of autism, one that models the attention tunneling of the autistic neurotype as an explanation for how we allocate attention in a non-pathological way. I rarely experience meltdowns today. I just tend to shut down. But if I had to work in a busy workplace, constantly being interrupted and then chastised for not meeting my targets and being in fear of my job, maybe with a difficult home life on top, I would be having more meltdowns too. Dr. K talks about a scenario that might cause a disproportionate emotional response, as he calls it, leading to what he calls a temper tantrum.
So the way that I make coffee or things like that are very, very like fixed. It has to be this way. And
restrictive repetition, flapping, echolalia, pattern object, rituals, patterns of behavior, just reading. It's quite hard to read his writing.
If things are not that way, then oftentimes there is what we would call from a neurotypical perspective, a disproportionate emotional response that can result in something like a temper tantrum or something like that.
And
something like that. You mean like a meltdown? You know, the thing that's very, very connected to like autism and emotional regulation. Hello, Jimmy. We got the hydration reminder in the chat. Hello, Marrow Cats. Yep, judging by his handwriting, he's definitely a doctor. Hello, Ants. Yes, we have an interesting couple of videos today. Yeah, autistic burnout is more intense and on a mode that isn't accommodated when on a burnout like you might get. Yes. Yeah. No, that's for sure. Like, it's not as understood and therefore perhaps not as accommodated as much as it should be. Hello, Mohammed.
Next thing that I'm going to talk about, so I don't know if this is actually a diagnostic criteria, but this is something that I tend to focus a lot on.
If a psychiatrist who has prepared this presentation in advance doesn't know, then why are you talking about it like you do? Look, let's move on. Is
emotional regulation. So we see this a lot in neurodiversity in general. So whether you have ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, we'll sometimes see certain like brain challenges. So one is emotional regulation. So there's a tendency for things like temper tantrums.
Brain challenges. Yeah, I think to be honest, like a lot of the emotional regulation issues comes from a greater sensitivity to the things that most people can kind of deal with and are fine with. And therefore, we're not as supported with those environments as we should be. But also potentially stuff related to alexithymia. And also, I would say, perhaps a lack of self-advocacy when it comes to being in environments that are quite, I have all the brain challenges. I won't share unless you really want one. Yes, I have a multiplicity of brain challenges.
He is definitely talking about meltdowns in his content here. And it's important to clarify that autistic meltdowns are distinct from tantrums.
Yes.
Meltdowns are involuntary responses to overwhelming stimuli, not behaviors that can be controlled or stopped at will, like tantrums can.
Yeah.
It's quite possible that in Dr. K's hypothetical situation, that if the coffee isn't made right, that there might be some challenging behavior, shall we say, from certain people. Yeah. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, as the saying goes.
I think one of the issues that I have with this characterization is that it's not necessarily being talked about in the context. Like, he's not talking about a meltdown. He's literally talking about temper tantrums from what I can see, what I can interpret. He's not even just replacing the word meltdown with a temper tantrum. Like, it's being talked about like it's an active thing that people do to like get what they want. Not paying attention to like the most common sort of dysregulation that's related to autism, which is meltdowns. He's a doctor, guys. He must know what he's talking about. Yeah.
It could be the last thing in a series of unfortunate events. An autistic meltdown is a distress response. It's a pressure over-release valve. On my scuba cylinders, there is a steel disc that is able to withstand extreme pressure, but not an infinite amount of pressure. If my cylinders, for instance, get extremely hot, this could cause the internal pressure to increase beyond the safe limit of the cylinders, and instead of exploding, the disc will pop with a loud bang, but the cylinders might be saved. This overpressure is like a meltdown. Most people in the autistic community report that following a meltdown and return to normality, that this prevents something worse from happening, a metaphorical gas cylinder explosion, if you will. Simplifying and...
I like that Mike was mentioning about sort of the straw that broke the camel's back kind of attitude stuff, because I have done a lot of sort of looking into why it is that small things that happen during the day just set me off, like for no discernible reason. And I think it's a lot to do, of course, with alexithymia, of not being able to tell how you're feeling up until like perhaps the extremes, or perhaps to like a very high level of anxiety or sort of emotional distress. But you have this idea that's used a lot in terms of talking about animals called trigger stacking, which is related to like the releases of cortisol. And there's been some sort of studies into autism and cortisol showing that we can release cortisol at much higher amounts, and it can last for a lot longer than most people. Yeah, it's a very nice freeze frame. And, that cortisol, it doesn't necessarily die down straight after you experience something stressful. It kind of sticks around. And over the day, if you have a lot of different things which are causing you stress, you can get to the point where a small thing that you weren't expecting, a small thing that stresses you out, just sort of tips you over the edge, It's talked about a lot in this sort of Coke bottle theory of parents reporting that children, when they come back from home, they have meltdowns, and they sort of associate the meltdown with coming home, whereas it's actually the amount of stress that's been accrued during the day that, and when they come home, they feel a lot more safe and able to so to be themselves, they let out the stress from the day in a safe space. So it's a very complex thing, for sure. Very complex. I'd really love, you know, if Dr. K was talking about emotional regulation, to hear a lot of these types of different things, because they are very applicable and also very helpful to understand as autistic people, you know?
Grouping tantrums and meltdowns together, there is a serious risk there of not just misunderstanding, but also mismanaging these episodes. For instance, the musician Sia, in her much maligned movie Music,
7%.
shows the young female autistic protagonist experiencing a meltdown. And sarcasm here, fortunately, someone who happens to be a large adult man throws himself on top of her and restrains her.
I am crushing her with my love.
It's a violent scene.
I'm crushing her with my love. Oh, lordy. Oh, no. I'm laughing because I don't know how to react. It's a very horrible scene, and definitely not the thing that you're supposed to do when someone is having a meltdown. It's pretty far from it, to be honest. Like, even people who are trained to do it, it's kind of like the last resort option if that person is in, like, danger. And even then, to a certain degree, people are debating whether it's something that you should do, you know, just in general.
That seems to depict a wholesome event. That seems to be what the movie is trying to say. You know, the caring guy is there and he holds down this young girl against her will.
Crushing you with my love.
Right? Restraining autistic people during meltdowns has and does lead to deaths sometimes.
Yeah.
And Sia did later apologise for this and deleted her ex, formerly Twitter account. "I'm sorry," she simply said in one post. In another, she added, "I plan to remove the restraint scenes from all future printings. I listened to the wrong people, and that is..."
They didn't. News update. Watch the recent reaction that I did to I'm Autistic Now's video on Sia.
"My responsibility. My research was clearly not thorough enough and not wide enough."
Nope.
She added that the film's warning could read, "Music in no way condones or recommends the use of restraint on autistic people. There are autistic occupational therapists that specialise in sensory processing who can be consulted to explain safe ways to provide proprioceptive, deep pressure feedback to help with meltdown safety." Her words, not mine. Also, that restraint scene, it's still in the film. Sure, deep pressure and proprioceptive feedback can...
Yeah, I'm not restraining this person. I'm just providing deep proprioceptive therapy. I mean, and don't get me wrong, deep proprioceptive like touch is good for me when I'm having a meltdown with people that I'm comfortable with, of course. But yeah, it seems it's kind of a roundabout way of, a very interesting way of explaining restraint. I think she was mentioning it as an alternative, of course, but wouldn't it be funny if that's the way that they talked about it?
Be grounding. I find it really helpful myself. Unfortunately, as a middle-aged man with a successful computer science career, I don't find that I have to...
Mike's in the chat. "I didn't mean to pin them down and steal their purse, officer. I was providing deep proprioceptive feedback on their wallet." Oh, Mike.
Endure too many meltdown episodes, and consequently people jumping on top of me or restraining me. Most recently, I talked about one such episode in my burnout video. It's only a few minutes long, and it's worth a watch if you haven't seen it before. I tend to shut down from overstimulation. Instead. But restraints, are you serious? Meltdowns need a supportive response, not a corrective one. Meltdowns are serious.
Honestly, like, as I said, like, most of my meltdowns tend to be anxiety focused, kind of looking similar to a fit. If someone did that to me, started restraining me, I don't know what I'd do. It's never really happened, but I feel like if someone tried to, it wouldn't go very well, you know. So please do not do that. Jesus.
And require more than just minor adjustments. They need a comprehensive understanding of the triggers and appropriate support to manage them. And as many of us have said, if you've seen one autistic person, you've seen one autistic person. What event triggers one person might soothe another. And that's why it's a spectrum. And that doesn't mean low functioning versus high functioning,
Nope.
like Dr. K thinks.
I've also worked with people who are very high functioning on the autism spectrum. So these are people who are friends of mine in medical school, who have become successful physicians and have very, very good bedside manner.
And he goes on.
So this repetitive behavior,
unlike
this is on
other
the higher
autistic
functioning
people.
side. We also have in autism the lower functioning side of this. So we'll have things like flapping, or even echolalia.
Good luck restraining Thomas. Yeah, no word of a lie. Like when I had my bike accident and they needed to like sort my knee out. I think they got in like 6 different members of staff to come try and restrain me down while I was. It was a very traumatic experience. Not gonna lie. I'm not going to go too much into it, but even then, they couldn't do it. So I actually had to just agree with it and just sit through it because it didn't work. So I feel like if one person was trying to restrain me in a meltdown, it'd just be like, no. When I'm in a meltdown, I can only tolerate touch from specific people. Yes, 100%. Me too.
Oh. You know what, Dr. K? I've been called high functioning a lot. And that's because I've worked for the military, I've worked in defense, I've worked for aerospace, I've worked for the NHS. I'm a former Microsoft engineer and I can point at things that only exist in this world because I created them. Thousands of people's salary gets paid through software that I wrote 15 years ago that's still in use today. This is not a how high can I pee up this wall competition, but I'd say I'm pretty technically capable. So I'm high functioning, right?
Autism, the lower functioning side of this. So we'll have things like flapping.
But what's this? I flap, okay? I move in ways that if I were in Dr. K's office, he might consider me low functioning.
Yeah.
At least that's before he reads my CV. At which point, the low and high functioning in Dr. K's brain meet like matter and antimatter, and a big hole of cognitive dissonance breaks in his psyche, as to him, you either have to be high or low functioning to be a client, it seems. The problem here is that high functioning implies that someone, say myself, have no support or low support needs that can.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it does for sure. The thing is, I think it's less about like the actual term and more sort of the context of how people use it. Like, it's used a lot or has been used a lot for people that I've talked to, like within the chat and stuff, to sort of undermine people's experiences or undermine the amount of support that person may need. Please move frame. Sorry. I always catch you at the worst angles. You look like a frog. No, I think that's important to say. Like, I know that we've kind of moved past using the low functioning, high functioning labels, which is good. Medically, we use ASD levels. I think the best way of approaching it is talking about relatively high and relatively low support needs. You know, because I'm diagnosed ASD1 technically. Well, not ASD1. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, but it's kind of the one-to-one transference thing. However, I can imagine that there are a lot of ASD2 individuals who are out there who perhaps have like more and less support needs than myself, you know, because it's based on strength of traits and it's also based on levels of functionality. Yeah. So there's two different elements to that.
Just be ignored or dismissed. And saying that someone is low functioning and has no strength at all. I often read in my own comment section stories about how young teenage autists were dismissed by psychiatrists as being non-verbal and having no language, nothing internal. And then they get access to electronic communication devices.
Yep.
And in a text chat format, there is zero difference between them and anyone else. Support needs, Dr. K. Support needs support and accommodate people, and they will surprise you.
Yes.
I think in my practice, I tend to see more higher functioning people on the spectrum. Yeah, I can't find the source right now, which is a real tragedy. I'll try to find it. So I'm going to just read y'all something that I think really captures the experience of someone who's high-functioning autism, probably.
Okay.
When professionals oversimplify, they may be prone to medicate instead of treat. Imagine someone in a wheelchair who's unable to access the bathroom because their sink unit is too high for them. And they get frustrated and annoyed, rightfully, hey? And they have a sudden angry outburst. Is the solution to install a new sink, perhaps lower down, in a more accessible location? Or is the solution to treat the emotions of the wheelchair user, the symptoms, to make them calm down and be more appealing to those around them?
Yeah, that's a really good... That's an interesting comparison. God damn it. Yeah, it's like saying, oh, you can't access this sink. You must be low functioning. Shut up. You have a low functioning brain. because you can't access this sync. God damn it.
Why do we give kids on the spectrum antipsychotics? Because we want to prevent outbursts. Because we want to like slow down that, like we'll give people sometimes like mood stabilizing medication so that the jitteriness of their neurons kind of calms down.
There are arguments for medication that can assist with calming, perhaps to help people redirect harmful behaviors or stims that might be dangerous. But I find it extremely concerning that Dr. K implies that on one hand, there's an autistic young person who is, in his words, having a temper tantrum,
have anger issues or throw temper tantrums.
And his solution is to medicate them into compliant behavior.
Antipsychotics are very strong drugs. Very, very, very strong. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely the last resort amongst like years and years of, you know, therapy, even in cases where perhaps people are in full-time supported care. I mean, it's not necessarily treating autism, it's more or less treating the input into their senses. Like it reduces that when you sedate it doesn't cause you as much anxiety. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I heard a lot of you guys talking about the Mary Jane. 100% of the CBD for sure. But mostly it's just treating levels of arousal, isn't it? It's like reducing the amount of anxiety that you feel, which is the problem, or irritability perhaps, which may lead to the anger. But antipsychotics is like a wild thing. Yeah, I know people who have, like myself, ASD1 individuals who have been treated with antipsychotics, particularly when they're misdiagnosed with other conditions like bipolar or BPD, and you know, it's really not a good thing. Really can reduce someone's executive functioning even further.
Quick pause. Dr. K and team, if you're watching this video because it's been shared with you or your team, you'd like an autistic person's perspective for balance or future review, my email is in the channel bio page. Please reach out to me. This isn't...
I don't think this is even the problem of this person doesn't have lived experience, the lived experience aspect of it. I think they're just missing out, just very, like it's just a large amount of knowledge like around autism, you know? I don't think it's, I mean, obviously that would be helpful, but my God.
Overreach. His whole video is an oversimplification of this topic, and it goes beyond just othering and meltdowns. We have a saying in computer science that when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. When you have a drug that medicates someone into compliance, why would you even work? Why would you even try to work on the triggers that cause the behavior?
Yeah.
If somebody's bleeding, you clean the wound and you stem the flow of blood. You don't just throw a cloth over it and call it a day, ignoring the shards of glass still embedded in the skin.
Or just like make them walk around with one of those inflatable balls, you know, to stop them from getting hurt. Yeah, that seems like a very good idea. Just removing, you know, causing more issues just to prevent the potential of one issue. This originated from psychology, by the way. Yeah.
It does require work, though. And for those of us who are late identified autistic adults, we've been walking around with the metaphorical shards of glass in our skin, an additional stressor that makes life, competing, and a neurotypical world so much harder than it should be. And part of that reason is because we don't or haven't fitted in with the definitions of what it means to be autistic or disabled or to have any support needs at all in a world where you just get wiped off as high functioning.
Yeah.
Fine. My own GP.
You're fine.
Said this to me. Meltdowns should not be trivialized or linked to notions of genius, as they are serious responses to distress and require careful handling. Other than medication,
they're not related to someone's level of intelligence or competency. That's the big one. Like if you see like myself and Mike are both of us have opened up about the fact that we have meltdowns. Like a lot of people will dismiss the fact that we can get into those states, but it's different. It's an emotional thing. It's like there isn't like one type of autistic person that will have meltdowns and another type that doesn't. You know, it's very dependent on the person, and it can look very different person to person. Sure, like 100%. You guys are talking about the cannabinoids. Cannabinoids. I do have a nice series of videos coming out at some point on that stuff. Yeah, I think it's a big disconnect because it does provide a lot of cognitive dissonance to people because, like, they see one area of competency, which could be communication and a specific field that they're very well researched in. And they expect that to be, would you say, contingent with like the rest of their life. Like, if they're good at this one thing, they can speak well about this one thing, therefore everything else is completely typical. You know, there's no differences. It's not true.
What else has he got?
Now, ABA, I have mixed feelings about.
Oh, goody.
So on the one hand, ABA is a, I believe, well-tested, well-understood intervention that is effective at treating the symptoms of autism.
Oh, Jesus.
We're going to shape someone's behavior.
I like the I believe qualifier there.
Is a, I believe.
Okay, it is better to be thought an idiot than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt, though. I don't love the symptoms language very much at all.
No, I don't either.
And I told him as much during his live stream. It cost me a $5, about $7. So feel free to stim the button, the like button on this video.
Oh, you're actually watching the video, the live stream as it was happening. Wow. Yeah. I can imagine the smoke coming out of your ears whilst watching this live stream. I've got a lot of feelings about that whole sort of behavioral based practice. I think a lot of the benefits mostly come from the fact that it is done one-to-one, and that's kind of my thoughts on it. However, the actual methodology and stuff, I think a lot of the research is very biased, and there needs to be a lot more look into it. And not to mention the large amount of negative testimonials and long-term effects that it can have on a person.
In return, please. Deal? As of 2022, 93.2% of the federal inmates in the United States were men, and 6.8% were women, according to them. So 93% of federal inmates were men. So is being a convicted criminal a symptom of maleness? Should we medicate all men before they commit any crimes? You know, just in case? Imagine how empty the prisons could be.
You know, I've met people who actually think that. I've met people they literally think that about guys, which is crazy. There is definitely a correlation, but it's not a symptom of being a dude.
Or is it something else? Not their sex causing the convictions, but some other attributes that could be just as easily dealt with. Maybe it's gangs. I mean, I don't see an autism gang anywhere. It would be like herding cats. And trust me, we've got 8 kittens at the moment. I am a literal cat herder right now. Are
you showing up to today's attack? Yeah, sort of. Maybe I'm kind of feeling a bit overstimulated today. Okay, let's just call it off.
So, back to it. Dr. K cites a study, Intensive Intervention for Adolescents with Autism Spectrum Disorder, comparison of 3 rehabilitation treatments, which he says...
I'm not an expert, so we're going to cover some evidence-based interventions, none of which I've learned formally. So practically, when I'm working with patients...
So he's literally said that he hasn't learned this formally.
Anti-ABA, I say, fuck it. Don't do ABA. You don't need to do ABA. If you don't like it, if you feel like it's masking, if you feel like it's traumatizing...
If you feel like it is.
If you feel like it's disconnecting from who you are, don't do it.
But this study did not seek ethical permission from the autistic people themselves.
Nope.
This wasn't about them saying, fuck it, I don't want to do ABA.
Oh my God. Oh, you made me laugh, but you're speaking some truth. Fuck it. Let's do some ABA. Let's not do it. Why not? Let's just give it a go. Let's not give it a go. Live in the moment. We are like the autism gang, and Thomas and Mike are our leaders. My mom says her chat's still not working properly. Well, I appreciate it. I'll take it as a compliment. Sorry for swearing on your stream. On the other hand, I'm your guest, so it's on you. No, it just means that I can say it now, which is nice.
Parents put them in those programs. It was the parents that signed off on this experiment.
So what this kind of means, here's how I take this away. And it's been a long time since I looked at this paper, so I don't remember the details of it, because I read this a month ago.
Because I read this a month ago. Quite. It is massively unethical, I think, to publish and report on something that you can't quite remember because you read it like a month ago. Why can I, guy on the internet, read and check my sources in my own time before bringing them into my content, but you, a psychiatrist with nearly 3 million subscribers, you can't do this? This is, in my opinion, unethical practice, Dr. K.
I'm not an expert in ABAs. And the goal of these things, like there are people who know this stuff better than I do, right? Not my area of expertise. So once again, I'm not.
I'd be interested to know if they made the caveat before making this video that they weren't talking from the perspective of being a doctor. Because if they did, it's a little bit less of an issue. But if the whole thing is basically posed as like a seminar given by a doctor, I think that's potentially that's potentially pretty bad practice, to be honest.
Not an expert in autism treatment by any means, and I'm sure that there are going to be people who are watching this who know more about autism treatment than I am, and by all means comment, tell me share our wisdom.
Look, I think it's important to mention that, you know, although this person is like a really big YouTuber, they are still like a human being, and I understand that, you know, having an interest in these fields, they do a lot of really good work, and they probably have very positive intentions with this stuff. But I do sort of agree with Mike on this one. I think it's a little bit too much. Problem is, Thomas, the branding of the channel is very heavily Dr. K, this or that. Yeah. So I'm not saying that, you know, if Dr. K, I don't know, watches this video as well, I'm not saying that he's like intentionally like a bad person or anything. I just think that, you know, it's important to get this stuff right and like research both the medical stuff and the psychological stuff and the lived experience stuff if you are going to like speak on autism in such a way, you know. It is disappointing. It's not like I hate Dr. K or anything. Like, I don't really tend to take that view very much because I understand that, you know, potentially sometimes with social media, if you're doing live streams and you've got things to do, you can't always read up massively on certain things. And I understand that there may be some people within their audience who are wanting them to talk more on it, and then sort of feeling pressured as a doctor to do so. So I understand that part, but again, like it is really not good enough in my opinion. There needs to be some kind of public response about it, or it needs to be something that's, you know, has a heavy caveat in the description, or they do something to like make or take it down. Even I don't really agree with like cancelling things and such like that, but it's very much like rife with misconceptions from what I've seen so far.
Share your wisdom with the rest of us. Share your wisdom with the rest of us.
Will do. So this study took 93 autistic adolescents aged 12 to 18 with level 2 and 3 support needs. It's a reasonable size for this study, but it makes a significant claim. It states all adolescents with ADSD reported improvements in core symptoms regardless of the type of treatment. But this abstract doesn't share any actual results though. No indication of what core symptoms means either. But the study was cited by another from 2019, published in a journal, Cogent Psychology, called How Much Compliance is Too Much Compliance? Is Long-Term ABA Therapy Abuse? In which they say the study criticises ABA for prioritising compliance over genuine understanding and accommodation of autistic behaviours. This compliance comes at a cost of potential long-term psychological damage, including reduced self-esteem and increased anxiety resulting from ABA practices. And it points out that there is a deficiency in longitudinal studies on the long-term effects of ABA, especially for non-speaking autists, and defines it as abuse.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, not speaking, I mean, I could speak forever on it, but not speaking about the actual practices that are involved with it. I think the weird sort of obsession with stopping autistic people's stimming or like making them have to make eye contact is just very disconcerting as that being an important thing that they need to focus on, you know, just being one of the gripes that I have with it. Compliance.
So remember that if you've got autism, it's not about treating autism. It's about treating a person, a human.
That's strange. Like, I kind of liked the fact they said treating autism, but treating a person? What? I thought he was going to say, it's not about treating autism, it's about treating the discomfort and the the issues that that person can have. You know, that's what I thought he was going to say. Does anyone on YouTube comment on commentary videos yet? Yeah, people do. But I don't think there's many autistic people who like do live streams like this. I think it's mostly videos. I think I'm autistic now. What does a lot of reaction based videos, but those tend to be a bit more polished than mine, for sure.
Who happens to have autism spectrum disorder. You are not an autist. You are a person with autism. It does not define you unless.
Thank you for that. For telling me how I should identify myself. I understand for some people who view it as a bad thing, that can feel like a nice thing to say. Like to a lay person, that seems like a nice thing. You know, put the person first, not this evil condition. But it's really not. It's really not. It's like a large part of who I am as a human being, you know? Meg should comment on this video. Yeah, 100%. Please do it, Meg.
Unless you want it to.
Dr. K sees autism as something terrible, something bad, something other to you than being human. Imagine if he said...
It's the pathology paradigm. That's it.
Instead, so remember, you've got homosexuality. It's not about treating queerness. It's about treating a person who happens to have a sexual orientation disturbance. You are not gay. You are a person with gayness. It does not have to define you unless you want it to. This isn't a joke, by the way. This is what all psychiatrists worked to prior to 1973. Yep. Dr. K's tutors would all have been from this, frankly, horrific culture, which, yes, medicated and provided ABA-like conversion-esque therapies to Alan Turing, for example, a brilliant mathematician and computer scientist, credited by his code-breaking invention that meant the German Air Force signals could be read by the British in the 1940s, giving Britons a decisive advantage in the war. He then worked on the ACE automatic computing engine at the National Physical Laboratory, the forerunner to the modern computer, and he was arrested for homosexuality, or should I say, quote-unquote, gross indecency, and had to undergo a horrific chemical castration. If you want to say you are someone with autism, that is also totally fine. Ask people how they prefer to be.
I like that Mike's inserted that as well, because I'm also very happy if someone wants to identify that way and they don't like want to call themselves an autistic person. I understand that. Like everyone has the right to do that, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, it's not a difficult one. Just ask the person, and it's okay. It's like, you know, normal to identify with your own brain, because that's what autism is the difference of you, like, you know,
labeled. But I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be referred to in that manner. But for myself, I prefer autistic person, just like 88% of the 3,000 respondents to my channel survey. I'm not a person with autism. I am autistic. I am male. I do not have maleness. I've been diagnosed with autism, but autism is not a disease. Autism is not a mental illness. Autism is a neurotype, a developmental condition. And much of the disability related to autism is societal. A place that only has stairs is disabling to a wheelchair user. So we build ramps, we make accommodations, we introduce new legislation for reasonable adjustments in publicly accessible buildings. And workspaces too. What we don't do is medicate wheelchair users to dull their rightful outrage at a lack of reasonable accommodations such as a ramp or accessibility lifts. That would be daft. I'm not saying all medication is bad. Like Dr. Case says, medication is a tool, but if your only tool is a pill, and your belief is that autism is similar to a disease that requires treatment...
Yeah, or compliance being the main outcome, not like the well-being of the autistic person. Hello, 21 Kittens. Nice to have you here. Hope you enjoy it.
Then, autism is the nail, and your prescription and links to ABA therapy might then just be the only tool that you have in your limited toolbox.
But on average, if I take a neurotypical person and someone who's on the autism spectrum disorder, on the ASD spectrum, what is the difference? There is some degree in like difficulty of like social emotional reciprocity. So there's another key feature here. So social emotional reciprocity means reading non-verbal cues.
Holistic non-verbal cues.
This also means like very simple things like difficulty with eye contact, which we'll get into. So this is an example of social norms. Difficulty with theory of mind.
Difficulty with social emotional reciprocity is one of the features that's observed during an autism assessment. However, before we get all disordered about it, you should know that any social emotional interaction takes at least two people to tango.
Yep.
The double empathy problem introduced by autistic researcher Dr. Damien Milton in 2012 rethinks the idea.
2012. 12 years ago. 12 years ago. It's not a like a thing that was just like a year before he just did a live stream, you know? It's there. It's oh god. There's so many things to talk about in this video. So many things. I just want to hear Mike talk.
Idea that social challenges in autism stem solely from the autistic individuals. Instead, it highlights mutual misunderstandings between autistic and non-autistic people, driven by their different emotional experiences and expressions.
We call it cross-cognitive communication difficulties. Two brains. They're not communicating the right way for the other person, or empathizing with the other person's experiences as much. Something that can happen between anybody who is different to another person. Not the cross-cognitive stuff, but, you know, not being able to empathize or like understand as much inherently. It's true.
This theory suggests that communication difficulties are two-way, bidirectional, affecting interactions between all neurotypes. Essentially, it's like autistic and non-autistic people speaking different languages, making effective communication a shared responsibility, not just one-sided. And on the language thing, if you've got one person speaking German and one person speaking French, and they're struggling to understand each other, it isn't the German's fault or the French person's fault. It's a responsibility of both sides to understand and try and communicate effectively with each other. But it's so tempting to look at someone different to you and say, they just don't get me. One of the problems that many autism researchers have faced involves making sweeping generalizations about autistic people, as though autism is this homogeneous single flavor.
Because remember, the other challenge with autism spectrum disorder is that they're very concrete thinkers. So their capacity to even step.
Yeah, I'd say even that's kind of I think it's more along the lines of we prefer concreteness. That feels safer to us, but we do have the capacity of, you know, thinking generally and thinking in great shades of grey. You know, it's quite an important aspect of talking about that, because there is a massive amount of autistic people who are into the creative side of stuff and the social side of stuff, which is inherently quite grey. My brain is so big and heavy, it's like concrete. 12 years ago is already canon in the Audiverse. Yes, for sure.
Outside of their mind is very difficult.
Imagine if he said this about black people or women. Their capacity to step outside their mind is very difficult. Such sweeping generalizations. It's almost as though he's struggling with some black and white thinking of his own right there. I made a fun video a while back called Neurotypical Spectrum Disorder, which essentially flips the tables on not just the diagnostic criteria for autism, but also pathologizes neurotypical symptoms. I don't mean it seriously, of course, but for the sake of argument, having repetitive, shallow conversations with people while sizing them up for their importance in your ridiculous dominance hierarchy, while making eye contact. In the West, you know, it's a very Western-based autism diagnostic criteria.
Yeah.
And never ever sharing your autistic joy or things that make you happy. You must remain cool and aloof at all times. People like that are disordered from my perspective. I wonder if Dr. K has any pills that can fix those deficits and make holistics more appealing to my personality, personal vibe.
Let's put them through compliance training to autistic people. It's part of looking for the word monotropic. Potentially. I mean, monotropism definitely covers like a lot of different things. I hate when doctors talk about capacity in definitive ways. Kathy Aspie says, personally, I feel there is more than just my autism. It certainly has great influence over my behaviors and thinking, but I'm not wholly defined by it. Yes. No, 100% me too. I'm not saying that autism is the only thing that makes me distinguished from other people, you know. It's not my entire identity. It is a pretty significant part of my identity, I would say, but no, I'm 100% like that's not why people prefer autistic, I would say. It's just taking ownership for the fact that autism is like a part of your brain, how you were born, basically.
I'm joking, of course. I was involved in a scientific study into seagrass transplantation recently. We aimed to restore this vital ecosystem in an area where it previously lived. Unfortunately, the experiment failed, as our transplant site ultimately wasn't good. The seabed was mobile and a storm destroyed much of the work. And I presume the reason for the mobile seabed is because the seagrass that was there before is now missing, and that works as a natural coastal defence. The forces of nature are difficult to contain, and the losses of certain natural defences mean that we have to build expensive man-made concrete ones instead. And my point is that it's so much better to work with nature than against it. Where autism is closely linked to sometimes significant challenges, including challenging behaviour, much of the time the symptoms, as he calls it, of autism, as Dr. K says, are no different to the symptoms of being male.
Yeah.
Autism is a natural variation
perspective.
in human neurodiversity, and not a set of symptoms to be cured, like a painkiller for a headache or, what's that thing, an Imodium for a runny poo. Instead of saying symptoms, say traits or features or characteristics to describe how autism may present. Anyway, talking of poo.
So there's also like other kinds of things. Like, so the gut microbiome seems to be very, very important for autism spectrum disorder. Okay? We'll talk about these in a little bit more detail.
I propose.
There's also been some research on like how cannabinoids can affect your microbiome. So good. No, it's a good segue, Mike.
An alternative view. Gastrointestinal issues are common amongst autistic people. Sure.
So is anxiety.
And this understandably increases our anxiety and stress. When I travel for stressful business meetings, a combination of the anxiety and different travel food can cause, let's be frank,
well, it's a multi-directional thing. Like it's I can't remember the word for it. Your gut microbiome affects your mental state, and your mental state affects your gut. They're both quite heavily interlinked. Like a lot of the serotonin that you make actually come from the breakdown of certain sort of chemicals in food, which produce 5-HTP. That's why you have 5-HTP tablets, and then that produces a serotonin that can be used in like your body. So it's, it has some real tie-ins. That's why mental health has also been talked about in the context of the gut microbiome, because it can also be pretty, most of the genetic material that's in your body is bacterial, just because of and a lot of it is centralized around your gut. So there's a lot of connections between your gut and your brain, for sure. Hello, Mudchats. Don't think I've seen you around in the chat before, but thank you for being a member. See you later, Layla. There's too much reliance on person's childhood in autism assessment. What about the individual, how the individual is today? I think that's mostly a result of a lot of the diagnostic tools being focused around what it looks like in kids, I think that's one of the reasons, potentially. We're more bacteria than we are ourselves. Maybe genetic sort of amounts wise. I don't know if it would be actually like physical mass. I'm not sure.
GI issues, and this isn't controversial at all. This increase in stress can also inflame any underlying GI issues, and GI issues then can make you more stressful and anxious.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of making it a particularly spiral of pain, if that's such a thing. As far as autism and GI goes, the scientific literature is far from exhaustive. The science on the gut-brain axis is still evolving anyway, and it's still very new.
Yeah,
there is some evidence supporting the impact of gut health on mood and certain behaviours, but let's not oversimplify and imply causation when you can't even prove correlation. Even if you prove a link to an autistic trait, not symptoms, thanks, then your work is still ahead of you to link this to autism or the management of co-occurring conditions. It's much easier to say, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, and move on. Gut health is an essential part of overall well-being, but it's not a singular solution or cause for complex neurodevelopmental conditions like autism. Whilst
the whole gut and diet stuff is a massive industry from what I've seen in the US. Massive industry. They have all sorts of different therapies that they do, talking about like the leaky gut and how it causes autism and stuff like that. It's there definitely is some potentials for autistic people not getting like the proper nutrition due to things like ARFID, just due to preferences, particularly in childhood, or those who have very sort of complex support needs. However, it's not like the cause of autism, it's something related to it, and obviously the IBS and the inflammation is related to it too. Thank you very much, Elaine Realized, for joining the Auti Legion. Good to have you, my friend. Oh yeah, guys, if you do like the stream, please make sure to like it, and if you want to see some more stuff from me, subscribe. And memberships are probably like the cheapest that you'll find on the internet, and you get to watch all of these live streams. There's a whole sort of backlog of a year's worth, probably about a year's worth of live streams And it helps support me.
Research into second brain gut microbiome is one thing. It feels very much like misdirected effort to me. There's little point in working deep in the weeds when your entire view is that autism is an undesirable set of symptoms that attach to a person and need to be treated. Just a bad choice of words, maybe? One of the rules on this channel is to give the benefit of the doubt and assume misunderstanding rather than malice. One of the rules on this channel is to give the benefit of the doubt and assume misunderstanding rather than malice. So, applying that rule to Dr. K then, is he spreading misinformation, outdated, harmful stereotypes willfully? Is this an ethical, professional standards problem? Or did he...
Yeah, I don't think it's a willful, like, causing harm. Like, I imagine that his intentions are good. I think just the fact that he's got such a large platform and he speaks from being a doctor complicates the whole situation very much so. I will talk about cannabinoids at some point in my videos, maybe not today, but I do have a series of cannabinoid-based videos that are coming out, possibly on Saturday. Got another video coming out on Wednesday, just letting you know. That's tomorrow. My God, the week is ahead of me.
He just forget to do some due diligence before sharing his psychology diploma era essay with the world. I was there in the beginning. I watched much of this live stream live. And so I spent a £5 on a super chat message correcting Dr. K, making it more likely that he'll see my message. This was quickly liked at least 20 times by other viewers and started a conversation in the live chat amongst other viewers, pleading with Dr. K
You're doing
to think,
God's
or at least
work.
Present a neutral, more balanced,
You're doing the autistic
non-pathologising
God's
viewpoint.
work.
He pauses for several moments and appears to read the live stream chat and doubles down again. So I don't think this is lazy speech. I think this is all his genuine belief. My cult...
I don't know. I think it is his genuine belief, but also comments, like particularly on the internet, like especially when someone disagrees with something, like there is a feeling like you just want to, like, I don't know, it's depending on what your mental state is like. Sometimes you get comments, sometimes you get messages, and you're just like, oh, I don't know anything about this person. I don't know what their research credentials are, like all of that, you know. So I don't think a lot of people know. Oh, thank you very much, Steph. Much appreciated for the super chat. I'll give that a like. Give it a love. Much appreciate it. Thank you. Speaking of interesting things, what is that dude yapping about? No idea. He looks weird. Mike. God damn it. Dr. K no longer deserves the benefit of the doubt given issues in his profession he has with his services. Just saying. What kind of issues has happened? Fill me in.
What you hear on my YouTube channel is to share and discuss the scientific evidence, or our stories. And I'll tell those from my experience that I have relatively freely. And if I'm wrong, I'll change my views on a dime. This is how science is done, without cherry picking a low quality paper, justifying compliance-based ABA and just not digging any deeper. It took me just one cup of tea to figure out that paper was nonsense, and it wasn't even time consuming, such as when I did the bogus autism reversal paper debunking earlier this month. I don't believe Dr. K as anything more than a pathologized, simplified view of autism.
Yeah.
He could be a great psychiatrist in other areas. He could be a good voice for young men in online gaming culture. I don't know, but with such a large platform, I'm pretty bummed out that his intellectual veracity on this occasion just isn't there. I'm disappointed that he's promoting extremely out-of-date and harmful views under the guise and mantle of authority. This isn't actually dissimilar to Autism Speaks, which speaks over actually autistic people, those that know them. The Autism Speaks board, being dominated by holistic people with a checkered political, pseudo-religious history, it plays directly into the culture of othering others who are autistic. More fuel for the bullies, potentially. And I hope that my video here is a suitable prescription against the symptoms of pathological othering.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Wow, that is a big super chat. My lordy. Thank you so much, dude. Or person. Pronouns, not. I can't, for some reason I can't see your name. Wait, I need to like Ego Rider. I've got, yeah, I thought I recognized the thingy. I'll tell you what, after we've done this, considering that, I will send you a link. I'll put in a link in the chat to Neurodivergent Insights website. Neurodivergent Insights has a lot of those Venn diagrams for sure. I don't have one myself, I don't have one that does all of them at the same time. But she does a pretty good job of showing the overlap between lots and lots of different things. Thank you, True Salvation. Tell you what, I know you've posted it a few times to try and catch my attention. I'll copy it for you. You don't need to message it anymore. I'll have a look at it after we do our stream. I think it's called a Venn diagram, the intersecting circles. Yeah, me too. Well, thank you very much, Eagle. I really appreciate it. It really does help me out a ton.
And ableist content pushed under the appeal to authority. If you'd like a break from this, I live stream every Tuesday, which is always a good time. You agree, right? In the comments below, if you watch
every
streams,
Tuesday.
It's a good time, right? Yeah, please. I bet they are. Yeah. And my last video was a fun music video, which is also definitely worth a watch if you need something a bit lighter to wash this video down with. Finding supportive, non-judgmental and kind autistic people was difficult for me at first, so I created the Scratching Post. It's a Discord community and access is included in all of my Patreon tiers. If you'd like more AF content in your life, it's there on my Patreon website, where we go deeper into these topics. And lastly, from Hydra and I, remember to hydrate. Bye!
No. Look at the fur babies. Oh, I'll leave them up for there. Please make sure to go and check out Autistic AF's original sort of breakdown video. I imagine that he's put a lot of work into this, and it's a pretty comprehensive reaction to a video which is fairly concerning to see from such a large platform. Thank you very much, Mike. I will like the video, and if you have enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and it really helps. And you can become a member for as little as £1. You can see all the uncut lives at the end of well, whenever you like, to be honest. You'll be able to see that on my main channel. Rambling my head off. I cannot, for some reason, be very concise, like to the point, like when I'm talking about this stuff. Go check out my main channel, and then you can catch the lives that I do. And so that was fire. Much needed, I would say, for sure. The full video doesn't defend him calling meltdowns, tantrums, or defending ABA period. It's good if when people are wrong, they recognize it and maybe post a correction in this case. Yeah, that would be the ideal. It'd be nice to actually do something with either myself or Mike. Obviously with Mike's blessings, I would love to talk to Dr. K about all this stuff. I think it would be quite an interesting conversation. We could have a good back and forth, you know. Hopefully it wouldn't be like a very confrontational interview or anything like that, because I definitely don't think that he has any malintentions with this. I just think that it was done very, very poorly. And I mean, like the last time that I talked about Dr. K's stuff, I had other people sort of coming in saying the same thing, that we are spreading misinformation about what he's saying. I don't think we're not trying to sort of ignite drama. I think like the thing that autism YouTubers do when talking about stuff like this, particularly myself and Mike, because I do know Mike in person. We're quite good friends, and you know, our intention is to eliminate like misunderstandings of autism and misinformation about autism. It's not to actually stir up drama and sort of take people down and stuff, you know. Ideally, I think the situation is that we could have a conversation with them and actually like make some progress in sort of shifting perspectives, particularly when people are very, on the whole, medical pathology kind of view of autism. Did you see that you talked to Dr. K after this video? I did. He told me about it. Yeah.